This example is showing how you can prove a pair of triangles congruent using congruent parts that you get from another pair of congruent triangles. So right here is the original diagram that we're asked to prove the blue triangles congruent. Unfortunately, all that we know is that the vertical angles are congruent, so we don't have anything else that we can use in those triangles. So we're going to use the given pair of congruent triangles. Those are the pink ones that I've drawn here, and they are triangles that were overlapping in the original diagram. So if you can see, I've pulled them apart and drawn them up above. So knowing that those given triangles are congruent, we can grab angle A and angle B are congruent from the original triangles that were given, and those correspond to A and B in the blue triangles. We can also use segment AC and segment BD in the original congruent triangles to get segment AC and BD in the blue triangles. Then, using the vertical angles that we know are congruent, we can prove the blue triangles congruent. So we've used the given congruent triangles, the congruent segments and angles from those triangles, then the vertical angles that we already knew were congruent in the blue triangles to prove the blue triangles are congruent by angle, angle, side. And then because they're congruent, that makes the corresponding parts congruent. So CE and DE are what we were trying to prove congruent, and they are now corresponding parts of the congruent triangles. So remember, you could have also written here corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. A second way to do this problem is to focus on this little triangle CED in the original diagram. And if we're able to prove that that's an isosceles triangle, then that would make CE and DE the legs that are congruent. So if you notice, this other option over here is shorter, but if you don't think to do that, if you don't notice that triangle CED, then you wouldn't necessarily think to do it this way. So we're going to use, in the original triangles, we knew that these two angles were congruent in the original congruent triangles, but those correspond to angle ADC down here and angle BCD down here that are congruent in that purple triangle, and then that's going to make this purple triangle isosceles. So because those angles are congruent, that makes the opposite sides of the triangle congruent, and that's what we were trying to prove.